There's something haunting about a city that shouldn't exist, a place where the streets hum with voices you can't quite hear, where the stones hold stories too wild to be true, yet too vivid to ignore. Picture this: you're walking through ruins older than memory itself, your fingertips brushing against carvings of gods whose names have been forgotten, stepping over thresholds where kings and queens once stood. These are the mythical cities, the ones that slip through the cracks of history, vanishing into legend but never truly dying. From the drowned spires of Atlantis to the golden mirage of Eldorado, these lost worlds aren't just figments of imagination, they're mirrors. They reflect our deepest fears, our grandest ambitions, and the unshakable question, what if they were real? Think about the stories you've heard, whispers of a paradise hidden in the Himalayas, a kingdom sunk beneath the waves by angry gods, a metropolis swallowed whole by the desert sands. These tales span continents and centuries, threading through ancient texts, folklore, and even the fevered dreams of explorers who risked everything to find them. But here's the strangest part: every myth has a seed of truth. Archaeologists have pulled real cities from the earth, places once thought to be pure fantasy, their ruins staring back at us like silent challenges. What if Atlantis wasn't just Plato's parable? What if Shambhala is more than a Buddhist allegory? What if the line between history and legend is thinner than we dare to admit? That's the journey we're starting today, a trek through 27 of these enigmatic cities, each one a puzzle wrapped in time. We'll dig into the archaeology that blurs into myth, the oral traditions that outlast empires, and the human obsession with places that might never have existed or might still be waiting to be found. By the end, you won't just hear these stories, you'll feel them, because these lost cities aren't just relics of the past. They're living, breathing reminders of our own world's fragility, our hunger for wonder, and the timeless truth that every civilization, no matter how mighty, risks becoming someone else's fairy tale. So tell me, when the next great city falls, what legends will they tell about us? There's a reason lost cities cling to our imaginations like shadows at the edge of a campfire. They're not just stories, but reflections of our deepest desires and darkest fears. Think about it: Atlantis isn't merely a sunken kingdom, it's a warning about ambition gone too far. Shambhala isn't just a hidden paradise, it's the promise that somewhere, somehow, there's a place untouched by chaos. These myths endure because they speak to something primal in us: the thrill of the undiscovered, the terror of being forgotten, the dream of starting over. Across cultures and centuries, the same patterns emerge. The Aztecs spoke of Aztlan, a homeland lost to time. The Celts whispered of wise swallowed by the sea. Even modern blockbusters like Black Panther's Wakanda tap into this longing for a place just beyond reach. It's no accident these stories survive. They're survival tools passed down through generations. A flood myth isn't just entertainment, it's a lesson about building on higher ground. A city punished by the gods isn't just drama, it's a reminder to live justly. But here's where it gets fascinating. Science keeps catching up to legend. Take Troy, once dismissed as Homer's fantasy until archaeologists dug up its walls. Or the real-life inspiration for Sodom, where excavations reveal evidence of a cataclysmic firestorm. These discoveries blur the line between myth and memory, suggesting that every tall tale might contain a shard of truth. Maybe Atlantis was inspired by the Minoan collapse. Perhaps Eldorado grew from a golden ritual misunderstood. The best legends are like mosaics, shattered pieces of history rearranged by time. What's truly remarkable is how these stories adapt. The same city can be a paradise or a prison depending on who's telling it. For some, Shambhala is a Buddhist ideal of enlightenment. For others, it's a Nazi obsession twisted into propaganda. These cities become blank canvases, projecting whatever a culture needs them to be: hope, warning, or justification. That's their power. They're never just about the past, they're about us. So as we begin our journey through these 27 cities, remember, you're not just hearing folk tales. You're decoding the human psyche, one ruin at a time. Whether carved from stone or spun from starlight, these places live because we keep resurrecting them. And that says more about who we are than any history book ever could. Plato's Atlantis is more than just a sunken city. It's a story that has haunted humanity for over 2,000 years. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, the philosopher describes a powerful island nation, brimming with advanced technology and untold wealth, only to be swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of catastrophe. But here's the question that keeps historians and dreamers awake at night. Was Atlantis ever real, or was it always meant to be a parable? Plato himself claimed the tale came from Egyptian priests who spoke of a civilization punished for its arrogance. The idea of a utopia destroyed by its own hubris resonates deeply, whether it's a warning about unchecked power or a reflection of our fear of collapse. Some researchers believe Atlantis might have roots in actual disasters. The volcanic eruption on Santorini around 1600 BC devastated the Minoan civilization, sending tsunamis crashing into Crete and leaving behind layers of ash. The parallels are striking: a thriving society wiped out in an instant. Others speculate wildly, placing Atlantis in the Caribbean, the Azores, or even beneath the ice of Antarctica. The sheer number of theories tells us something important. People want Atlantis to be real. It's not just about finding ruins, it's about proving that greatness can be lost, that even the mightiest can fall. And then there's the cultural legacy. Atlantis has inspired everything from Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to blockbuster films and conspiracy theories about ancient aliens. The Nazis searched for it, believing it held Aryan secrets. New Age thinkers claim it was home to crystal-powered energy grids. Why does this myth endure? Because it's adaptable. Atlantis can be whatever we need it to be: a cautionary tale, a lost golden age, or a symbol of mysteries yet unsolved. But perhaps the most compelling idea is this: Atlantis isn't just a place. It's a mirror. When we look for it, we're really asking ourselves what our civilization might leave behind. Will we be remembered as builders or destroyers? The next time you hear a story about a sunken city, remember, the truth might be less about the past and more about the future we're trying to avoid. The story of Eldorado begins not with a city, but with a man, a Muisca king who glimmered like the sun itself. According to indigenous traditions in what is now Colombia, their ruler would coat his body in gold dust during sacred ceremonies, then paddle out onto Lake Guatavita on a raft adorned with treasures. At the center of the lake, he'd plunge into the waters, washing away the gold as an offering to the gods. This ritual wasn't about hoarding wealth, but about balance, giving back to the earth what had been taken from it. When Spanish conquistadors heard fragments of this tradition in the 1500s, their imaginations twisted it beyond recognition. Starved for gold after plundering the Aztec and Inca empires, they grafted their own fantasies onto the story. Suddenly, the ceremonial act became proof of an entire city paved with gold, hidden somewhere in the uncharted jungles of South America. The name Eldorado, meaning the Golden One, shifted from describing a person to labeling a place, a mirage that would drive men to madness. Expeditions launched one after another, each more desperate than the last. Gonzalo Pizarro led 600 men into the Amazon rainforest in 1541, only to resort to eating their own horses before straggling back empty-handed. Sir Walter Raleigh mounted 2 separate quests in the 1590s, losing his son in battle and ultimately his head to King James I when he violated peace treaties in his obsessive search. The jungle swallowed thousands of lives, not just Europeans, but indigenous guides forced into service, their knowledge exploited for a prize that didn't exist. What makes Eldorado so fascinating isn't just the myth, but how it evolved. Spanish chroniclers exaggerated native stories intentionally, knowing tales of riches would secure them royal funding. Later, the legend absorbed elements from other cultures: Incan temples, Mayan pyramids, even rumors of a golden woman who ruled a city called Manoa. By the 18th century, maps marked vast regions of South America with the tantalizing label Eldorado, despite no explorer ever finding so much as a golden doorknob. Archaeology now suggests the Muisca people did possess remarkable gold-working skills, but their treasures were spiritual, not monetary. The famous Bolsa Muisca artifact, a golden raft figurine depicting the very ceremony that started it all, shows how Europeans misunderstood what they were seeing. To the Muisca, gold represented the sun's energy, something to be ritualistically returned to the gods, not piled greedily in vaults. Eldorado's legacy lingers in surprising ways. The name adorns everything from luxury hotels to comic book heroes, always symbolizing unattainable dreams. Psychologists even use the Eldorado effect to describe how obsession blinds people to reality. In the end, the real treasure wasn't gold, but the cautionary tale itself, a reminder that when we chase mirages, we often destroy the very things of true value along the way. Pompeii stands as one of history's most chilling time capsules, a bustling Roman city frozen in a single catastrophic moment. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in the year 79, it didn't just destroy Pompeii. It preserved it under layers of scorching ash and pumice, creating an eerie snapshot of ancient life interrupted. Unlike legendary cities like Atlantis, Pompeii's reality makes its story all the more haunting. Walk its streets today, and you'll see bread still sitting in ovens, frescoes halfway painted, and even the hollow spaces where bodies once lay, now filled with plaster to capture their final moments. These aren't artifacts, they're human stories suspended in time. The eruption unfolded like a nightmare. Pliny the Younger, who witnessed it from across the bay, described a towering column of smoke, like an umbrella pine, before the sky turned black. Poisonous gases rolled down the mountain first, suffocating those who hadn't fled. Then came a rain of pumice stones, followed by pyroclastic surges, waves of superheated ash moving at 100 miles per hour, burying everything in their path. Some victims were found clutching bags of coins, others huddled with loved ones. One particularly poignant cast shows a man sitting with his knees drawn up, hands covering his face as if waiting for the end. What makes Pompeii unique among lost cities is how ordinary its tragedy feels. This wasn't a mythical kingdom punished by gods, but a working-class town full of bakeries, brothels, and graffiti-covered walls. The famous inscription, Sodom and Gomorrah, scratched onto one wall suggests some saw the eruption as divine retribution, but most victims were simply caught in the wrong place. Over time, their misfortune became symbolic. Artists from Bulwer Lytton to Pink Floyd have used Pompeii to represent sudden catastrophe or the vanity of human ambition against nature's power. Modern archaeology reveals even deeper layers. The city's drainage systems, public baths, and fast food counters show a society remarkably similar to ours. Political campaign ads still visible on walls prove some things never change. Yet for all its familiarity, Pompeii also holds mysteries like the Witch's Curse tablets found in a garden, or the strangely modern-looking Pompeii dancer fresco that seems to defy ancient artistic conventions. Perhaps the most unsettling lesson of Pompeii is its unpredictability. Vesuvius had been dormant for centuries before it woke. The same could happen to any of us, a reminder that civilization hangs by a thread. Unlike the moral fables of Atlantis or Sodom, Pompeii's story carries no warning except this: disaster doesn't discriminate. The next city we explore, however, exists in the realm of pure belief, a paradise said to reveal itself only when the world needs it most. High in the snow-laden peaks of the Himalayas, where the air grows thin and the world feels untouched by time, legends speak of Shambhala, a kingdom hidden not just by mountains, but by the very fabric of human perception. Unlike the sunken ruins of Atlantis or the golden mirage of Eldorado, Shambhala is said to exist in a realm between the physical and the spiritual, visible only to those who have mastered their own darkness. Tibetan Buddhist texts describe it as a circular paradise, its capital Kalapa radiating with golden temples and emerald gardens, ruled by enlightened kings who guard ancient wisdom. But here's the twist: Shambhala isn't just a refuge, it's a promise. Prophecies foretell that when war and greed plague the earth, its armies will emerge to restore balance, heralding a new age of enlightenment. This duality, both a place and a prophecy, has fueled endless fascination. Some scholars trace Shambhala's roots to the real-life kingdom of Zhangzhung, which thrived in western Tibet over 1,000 years ago before vanishing into obscurity. Others argue it's purely allegorical, a metaphor for the inner journey toward enlightenment. But history shows how easily myth can be weaponized. In the early 20th century, theosophists like Helena Blavatsky claimed Shambhala held the secret origins of the Aryan race, a distortion later adopted by Nazi occultists. Heinrich Himmler even sent expeditions to Tibet, convinced Shambhala's pure-blooded masters would aid the Third Reich. The irony is stark. A legend meant to symbolize purity became a tool for bigotry. Yet Shambhala endures, untouched by these corruptions. For Tibetan Buddhists, it remains a living truth, its location encoded in sacred texts like the Kalachakra Tantra. Modern seekers still trek to remote valleys, drawn by whispers of hidden valleys where time moves differently. In Bhutan, places like the Baol valleys are considered gateways to Shambhala, their lush landscapes guarded by protective deities. The allure isn't just about finding a physical city, it's about the idea that somewhere, somehow, perfection exists. What makes Shambhala timeless is its adaptability. To a monk meditating in a Himalayan cave, it's a state of mind. To a conspiracy theorist, it's a UFO base. To a climate activist, it's a symbol of harmony with nature. Unlike other lost cities, Shambhala's power lies in its elusiveness. It's not a ruin to excavate, but a mirror reflecting what we yearn for. Hope that when the world seems beyond saving, salvation might still be waiting, hidden just beyond the next mountain pass. Off the rugged coast of Brittany, where the Atlantic crashes against cliffs older than memory, legends whisper of a city lost beneath the waves, Wise, the jewel of Celtic folklore. Unlike the grandeur of Atlantis or the golden haze of Eldorado, Wise feels intimately tragic, a tale woven from storm surges and human frailty. At its heart stands Princess Dahat, a figure as complex as she is cursed. Some say she was rebellious, others that she was merely unlucky in love, but all agree her actions doomed an entire kingdom. According to the oldest Breton ballads, Wise was a marvel of engineering, its towering walls and bustling markets protected by a massive gate that held back the sea. The key to this gate hung around the neck of Dahat's father, King Gradlon, until the night his daughter, whether tricked by a demonic lover or driven by her own recklessness, stole it. When the gate swung open, the ocean roared in, swallowing Wise whole. But here's where the story splits like a river delta. Some versions paint Dahut as a villain, her hedonistic parties and defiance of sacred rules inviting divine wrath. Others suggest she was a victim, her fate sealed by the rigid expectations of a patriarchal world. The parallels to Sodom and Gomorrah are unmistakable, a city punished for its sins, yet Wise carries a distinctly Celtic flavor. The sea here isn't just an instrument of punishment, it's alive, almost sentient. Fishermen still claim to hear the drowned city's bells tolling during storms, a sound both mournful and accusatory. Geologists have found grains of truth in the legend. The Bay of Douarnenez, where Wise is said to lie, has seen catastrophic floods throughout history. Medieval manuscripts describe a great inundation around the 5th century, possibly triggered by a tsunami or a massive storm surge. Ruins of ancient settlements have indeed been discovered underwater nearby, though none match the splendor of mythical Wise. This blend of natural disaster and moral parable makes the story endure. It's not just about a flood, it's about the tension between human ambition and the forces we can't control. What's most haunting, though, is how Wise lingers in Breton culture. Every year, locals reenact the legend in festivals, with masked performers embodying Dahut and the doomed citizens. The tale has inspired operas, novels, and even a surrealist film by Gene Epstein. Unlike other lost cities, Wise feels personal, its tragedy threaded into the identity of a people who have always lived with the sea at their doorstep. It's a reminder that some myths aren't just stories, they're warnings etched into the landscape itself, whispered by the wind and the waves long after the city has sunk beneath them. Deep in the endless sands of the Sahara, where mirages dance like ghosts on the horizon, lies the legend of Zerzura, a city so elusive it's said to vanish the moment you lay eyes on it. Known as the Oasis of Little Birds, this mythical white-walled haven was whispered about in Arab caravan tales as early as the 13th century. Travelers spoke of a paradise hidden among the dunes, its gates guarded by slumbering giants, its courtyards shaded by date palms, and its wells overflowing with water sweeter than honey. But Zerzura wasn't just a refuge from the desert's cruelty. It was a siren call to those obsessed with the unknown. The legend warned that the city would only reveal itself to the pure of heart, while others claimed it was a trap, luring the greedy to their doom beneath the sands. European explorers, already feverish with the hunt for Timbuktu and the Nile source, seized on these stories in the 19th century. Men like Laszlo Olmosy, the real-life inspiration for the English patient, mapped impossible routes through the Libyan desert, convinced Zerzura lay just beyond the next dune. The irony, some did stumble upon ruins like the Gilf Kebir Plateau's prehistoric cave paintings, but none matched the glittering city of legend. Instead, they found silence and scorching wind. The desert, it seemed, was playing a cruel joke, offering just enough evidence to keep the dream alive, but never the prize itself. What makes Zerzura so compelling isn't just the treasure hunt, but what it represents. To Sufi mystics, it symbolized divine truth, always just out of reach, visible only in glimpses. To psychologists, it's a metaphor for obsession, how the pursuit of an idea can consume us, blurring the line between discovery and delusion. Even World War II twisted the myth. Britain's Zerzura Club of Desert Navigators used the name for covert missions, proving how legends adapt to new eras. Yet the Sahara keeps its secrets. Satellite imagery has revealed ancient riverbeds and lost settlements, but no white city. Perhaps Zerzura was always meant to be a mirage, a reminder that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Or maybe, like the sleeping giant said to guard its gates, it's simply waiting for the right moment to wake. Either way, the next city on our journey needs no introduction. Its name alone evokes awe and terror, carved into the bedrock of biblical history. Hidden in the dusty pages of Deuteronomy lies a detail so strange it sparked debates for millennia: a king's bed made of iron, 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. That's over 13 feet by 6, a sleeping place fit for a being of impossible size. King Og of Bashan wasn't just a ruler. According to scripture, he was the last of the Rephaim, a race of giants who once dominated the land east of the Jordan River. His kingdom, with its 60 fortified cities of towering basalt walls, was said to be so formidable that even Moses hesitated before attacking. Yet when the Israelites finally conquered Bashan, they described the victory as divine punishment, not just against a people, but against an entire breed of monsters. Archaeologists have long puzzled over these claims. In the 1960s, excavations in modern-day Syria uncovered massive stone structures near the ancient city of Edrei, where Og was said to rule. Some bones found in the region were unusually large, though scientists argue they're likely misidentified mammoth or elephant fossils. But here's where it gets fascinating. Across the ancient Near East, from Canaan to Mesopotamia, texts speak of the Rephaim as both historical figures and supernatural beings. The Book of Enoch even claims they were the offspring of fallen angels and human women, echoing Greek myths about the Titans or Norse legends of the Jotun. What makes Bashan unique isn't just the giant lore, it's how these stories served a political purpose. By depicting Og's people as monstrous, the Israelites justified their conquest as holy war. The bed artifact, whether real or symbolic, became proof of their enemies' otherness. This pattern repeats worldwide. The Greeks called their pre-Olympian gods giants. The Hindu epics described the demonic deities as towering foes, and even Britain's early chronicles claimed Stonehenge was built by a vanished race of giants. Modern scholars see these tales as cultural memory, distorted over time. The Rephaim may have been real warriors, perhaps taller than average due to nutrition or genetics, whose stature grew in legend as their civilization faded. Or perhaps, like the Cyclopean walls of Mycenae, their massive architecture inspired myths long after the builders were forgotten. Either way, Bashan's giants remind us how easily history twists into myth, especially when we need stories to explain the unexplainable or to justify the unforgivable. Now we turn from a city of giants to one where magic wasn't just legend, but lore, a place where the line between sorcery and statecraft blurred into something extraordinary. Camelot isn't just a castle, it's an idea so powerful that it shaped kingdoms, inspired revolutions, and even defined presidencies. The Arthurian legends describe it as a shining city of golden spires and emerald lawns, where knights pledged themselves to justice and King Arthur ruled with wisdom. But what's fascinating isn't the grandeur, it's the fragility. Camelot's downfall didn't come from invaders or natural disaster, but from within betrayal, love, and the slow unraveling of trust. The Round Table, where no seat was higher than another, symbolized a radical notion for its time, that leadership could be collective, not tyrannical. Yet even this ideal couldn't withstand human nature. Historians have long debated whether Camelot was inspired by a real place. Cadbury Hill in Somerset, with its Iron Age fortifications, is a leading candidate. Locals once called it Camelot Castle, and excavations revealed a great hall fit for a king. Other theories point to Caerleon in Wales or Tintagel in Cornwall, where a slate engraved with Artugnu was found, sparking whispers of Arthur. But the lack of concrete evidence only fuels the legend. Camelot works best as a metaphor, not a pin on a map. It's the dream of a society where might serves right, where power is tempered by compassion. The story's endurance is staggering. Medieval troubadours sang of Camelot to flatter their patrons, implying their courts could rival Arthur's. Tennyson's Idylls of the King reimagined it as a Victorian parable about duty and desire. And then there's the 20th century's most famous borrowing, the Kennedy White House dubbed Camelot by Jackie Kennedy, framing her husband's presidency as a brief, glorious moment before tragedy. The term stuck, proving how deeply we yearn for leaders who embody Arthur's mythical nobility. Yet Camelot's true legacy lies in its contradictions. It's a utopia built on war. Arthur's knights spent as much time fighting as questing for the Holy Grail. It's a beacon of equality in a world where women like Guinevere and Morgan Le Fay had limited agency. Modern retellings, from the once and future king to Monty Python, poke at these flaws, reminding us that idealism often clashes with reality. That tension is why Camelot endures. It's not a perfect blueprint, but a mirror. When we imagine it, we're really asking, what would it take to build a society worthy of legend? Now we turn from a city of ideals to one of eerie silence, a settlement that didn't fade into myth but vanished overnight, leaving behind a single, cryptic clue. The mystery of Roanoke isn't just about disappearance, it's about the silence that follows. In 1587, a group of English settlers landed on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what's now North Carolina, led by John White. Among them was his own granddaughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World. But when White returned from a supply trip to England 3 years later, he found the colony utterly abandoned. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just the word Croatoan carved into a wooden post and crow etched into a tree. The settlers had vanished into the wilderness, leaving behind only these cryptic clues and a puzzle that's taunted historians for centuries. What makes Roanoke so chilling is its proximity to recorded history. Unlike Atlantis or Camelot, this wasn't some ancient legend passed down through generations. These were real people with names and families who simply ceased to exist within living memory. The leading theory suggests they integrated with the Croatoan tribe, a friendly indigenous group on nearby Hatteras Island. Archaeologists have found European artifacts mixed with Native American tools there, including a signet ring possibly belonging to one of the colonists. But other theories are far darker. Some accounts from later Jamestown settlers speak of pale-skinned children among the tribes, while others whisper of violent clashes or even cannibalism. The truth may never be known, and that uncertainty has fueled everything from scholarly debates to horror novels. Roanoke's legacy stretches far beyond history books. The story has seeped into pop culture, inspiring episodes of supernatural American Horror Story and countless conspiracy theories. The name itself has become shorthand for inexplicable vanishings. NASA even nicknamed a lunar crater, Roanoke, after the lost colony. But perhaps the most haunting aspect is what it reveals about colonization's fragility. These settlers weren't conquering heroes. They were vulnerable, unprepared, and ultimately swallowed by the very land they'd hoped to tame. Their fate serves as a reminder that the New World was never truly empty, just waiting to rewrite the stories of those who dared to claim it. Now we turn from a colony lost to time to a legend forged from greed, a city so dazzling it drove men to madness in their quest to find it. The legend of Sabola didn't begin with gold, it began with a misunderstanding. When Spanish explorer Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca stumbled back into Mexican territory in 1536 after 8 years lost in the wilderness, his tales of indigenous cities sparked a frenzy. But the most electrifying detail came not from Cabeza de Vaca himself, but from a second-hand account. A Moorish slave named Estevanico claimed to have heard of 7 magnificent cities north of the Sonoran Desert, their streets paved with gold, their walls studded with turquoise. By the time the story reached Viceroy Antonio de Mendoza, the cities had names Cibola among them, and a mythology all their own. What's fascinating isn't just the exaggeration, but how layers of cultural translation warped reality. The Zuni people, whose pueblos later became the cities in question, never described them as golden. Scholars now believe the confusion stemmed from two sources: trade networks transporting pyrite or mica, which glittered like precious metal, and the Spanish tendency to interpret native symbolism literally. When Francisco Vázquez de Coronado led an expedition in 1540, he expected a metropolis rivaling Tenochtitlan. Instead, he found Hyperborea, a modest adobe settlement whose greatest treasure was its corn stores. The crushing disappointment didn't stop Coronado from pressing deeper into Kansas, convinced the real Sabola lay just beyond the horizon. Sabola's legacy is a masterclass in the power of collective delusion. The myth persisted because it served too many interests. Explorers needed sponsors, monarchs needed justification for colonization, and the public needed dreams. Even after Coronado's failure, maps continued marking phantom cities across the Southwest for centuries. The name Sabola became shorthand for any elusive paradise, attaching itself to mountains, counties, and even a nuclear test site. But here's the twist: the Zuni people had their own version of the story. Oral traditions speak of a prophecy that strangers would come seeking wealth but leave empty-handed, a warning about the dangers of misplaced desire. In the end, Sabola wasn't a lie so much as a collision of worldviews. The Spanish saw what they wanted to see, while the Zuni understood a deeper truth. Not all that glitters is gold, and sometimes the real treasure is knowing what not to chase. Now we turn to a city that refused to be conquered not by force, but by vanishing into the waters like a whispered prayer. Deep in the forests of Russia's Nizhny Novgorod region, where mist curls over the surface of Lake Svetloyar like a veil, whispers persist of a city that refused to die. Kitezh wasn't just swallowed by the waters, it chose them. According to 13th century legends, as Mongol armies led by Batu Khan advanced on the holy city, its pious inhabitants prayed for deliverance. In answer, the ground itself opened, swallowing Kitezh beneath the lake's surface, leaving only the faintest ripple where golden domes once gleamed. But the story doesn't end there. Locals claim that on still nights, especially before Orthodox Christian feast days, the lake's depths echo with otherworldly chants and the haunting toll of submerged bells. Some swear they've glimpsed the ghostly outlines of churches in the water's reflection, shimmering like a mirage before dissolving into the twilight. What makes Kitezh extraordinary isn't just its magical disappearance, but what it came to symbolize. During the darkest years of Soviet repression, when religion was brutally suppressed, the legend of Kitezh became a covert anthem of resilience. Dissident artists painted it as a metaphor for faith surviving beneath the surface of state atheism, a spiritual resistance as unbroken as the city's phantom bells. Composers like Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov immortalized it in opera, while poets wove it into verses about endurance. Even today, pilgrims circle the lake in silent procession, their footsteps tracing the invisible walls of a sanctuary they believe still exists just beyond sight. Archaeologists have probed Lake Svetloyar's depths, finding evidence of ancient settlements but no sunken metropolis. Yet the absence of proof only deepens the mystery. For believers, Kitezh isn't a ruin to excavate. It's a living testament to the idea that some truths defy material evidence. The lake's crystalline waters, which never freeze completely even in the harshest winters, are said to hold healing properties, a physical echo of the city's spiritual purity. Kitezh's legacy challenges us to reconsider what we call real. Is a city less meaningful because it exists in collective memory rather than stone? or does its power lie precisely in its elusiveness? A reminder that faith and culture can't be erased, only hidden, waiting for the moment to rise again. As the whispers of Lake Svetloya suggest, sometimes the most enduring cities are the ones we can't see, only feel. Now we journey south to a place where the stones themselves were said to mourn, a city whose walls wept tears of judgment. In the heart of Tunisia's arid landscape, where the Sahara's breath turns sand to shimmering waves, lies a place where stone itself is said to mourn. Nefta's legend begins with a city hardened by cruelty, its people so indifferent to suffering that even the walls wept in protest. According to local law, the tears of the oppressed seeped through the very bricks, leaving glistening trails down the facades until a saint's single tear struck the earth. Where it fell, a spring bubbled forth, transforming the cursed ground into an oasis of palm-fringed pools. The story echoes biblical tales like Lot's wife, frozen for her disobedience, or Niobe of Greek myth, whose grief turned her to weeping stone. But Nefta's miracle isn't just punishment, it's redemption written into the land. What makes this myth so enduring is how it intertwines with tangible reality. The springs of Nefta are very much real, their waters feeding lush gardens in the desert, a sight so improbable that early Arab travelers called it the miracle of the faithful. By the 13th century, Sufi mystics had established a spiritual hub here, drawn by the symbolism of life emerging from repentance. The city became known as the Kaabala of the Maghreb, a pilgrimage site where the physical and metaphysical blurred. Visitors still tie ribbons to the branches of ancient trees, whispering prayers where the saint's tear supposedly fell. Nefta's duality, as both cautionary tale and sanctuary, reveals the power of environmental storytelling. Unlike cities swallowed by seas or buried in ash, its transformation is ongoing. The walls may no longer weep, but the oasis remains, a living reminder that even in the harshest landscapes, compassion can take root. This idea resonates across cultures, from the petrified forests of legend to modern eco-fables about nature's retaliation. Now we turn from a city redeemed by tears to one consumed by fire, a place whose name alone has become shorthand for divine judgment and societal collapse. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah isn't just a biblical account of divine punishment, it's a cautionary tale etched into the very language we use today. These twin cities, synonymous with wickedness and excess, met their end in a cataclysm of fire and brimstone, their names forever tied to the concept of moral collapse. But beneath the layers of allegory lies a startling possibility. These cities might have been real, and their destruction could have been triggered by an event far beyond human understanding. Recent excavations at Tall El Hammam in modern-day Jordan reveal a settlement that thrived for millennia before being suddenly abandoned around 1650 BCE. The evidence is chilling: melted pottery, skeletal remains showing extreme trauma, and a layer of ash and debris consistent with a high-temperature explosion. Scientists now theorize that a cosmic airburst similar to the Tunguska event in 1908 could have leveled the area in an instant, turning fertile land into a wasteland. What makes this discovery so compelling is how it bridges myth and science. The biblical description of fire from heaven and Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt takes on new meaning when you consider the geological record. The region's salt-rich soil and the sudden calcification of materials could explain the ancient imagery. Even the timing aligns. The collapse of Tall El Hammam coincides with the decline of other Bronze Age civilizations, suggesting a broader catastrophe. But the story's power isn't just in its historical roots. It's in how it's been weaponized and reinterpreted across cultures. The term sodomy emerged from this narrative, but so did countless artistic and literary works exploring themes of justice and mercy. From Renaissance paintings depicting Lot's desperate flight to modern debates about morality and punishment, Sodom and Gomorrah remain a mirror for society's deepest anxieties. Yet there's another layer to this tale, one often overlooked. The cities weren't just destroyed for their sins, they were offered a chance at redemption. Abraham famously bargained with God, pleading for their survival if even a handful of righteous people could be found. This nuance transforms the story from simple retribution into a meditation on collective responsibility. It asks how much corruption is too much. When does a society cross the line beyond saving? These questions resonate today, whether we're discussing political scandals, environmental crises, or the erosion of empathy in the digital age. The legacy of Sodom and Gomorrah endures because it's not just about two ancient cities. It's about the fragility of civilization itself, how quickly prosperity can turn to ash, and how the choices of a community ripple across generations. As we turn next to a city swallowed by the earth, we're reminded that these stories aren't just warnings from the past. They're invitations to reflect on what we're building and what we might be risking in our own world. Helike's disappearance was so sudden, so absolute, that even the ancient Greeks struggled to comprehend it. One night in the winter of 373 BCE, this thriving coastal city, home to philosophers, merchants, and a revered temple dedicated to Poseidon, was simply gone. Eyewitness accounts describe a night of terror. Massive earthquakes split the ground open, tsunamis surged inland, and by dawn, Helike had sunk beneath the waters of the Corinthian Gulf. The few survivors claimed it was the wrath of the sea god himself, punishment for denying a group of desperate refugees shelter within their walls. But what's fascinating isn't just the tragedy, it's how quickly myth swallowed history. Within generations, Helike became a cautionary tale, its ruins invisible beneath the waves, its name synonymous with divine retribution. For centuries, explorers searched for the lost city, drawn by ancient texts that placed it somewhere along Greece's northern coast. The Roman travel writer Pausanias claimed he saw Helike's submerged ruins in the 2nd century CE, their bronze statues still standing like sentinels in the deep. But as time passed, the city faded into legend, blending with stories of Atlantis until the two were nearly indistinguishable. That is, until 2001, when a team of archaeologists finally pinpointed Helike's remains not under the sea, but buried beneath layers of silt and gravel inland. The discovery revealed a grim truth. The city hadn't just sunk, it had been violently wrenched apart. Evidence showed liquefaction, a phenomenon where solid ground turns to quicks, and during earthquakes followed by a tsunami that dragged the shattered remains into a coastal lagoon. Helike's story resonates today because it's a blueprint for how disasters become legends. The same forces that destroyed it, seismic shifts, rising waters, are threats we now associate with climate change. Modern cities from Venice to Miami face similar fates, their vulnerabilities laid bare by storms and sinking coastlines. There's an eerie symmetry between Helike's demise and contemporary fears. When nature strikes back, societies often interpret it as moral reckoning. After Hurricane Katrina, some called it divine judgment. After the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, others saw karma. These narratives, like Helike's, reveal less about the events themselves and more about our need to find meaning in chaos. Yet Helike's rediscovery also offers hope. The city wasn't erased, just hidden, waiting for technology and persistence to reveal its secrets. Its ruins, now protected as a UNESCO site, include crushed pottery, twisted metal, and even the faint outlines of streets, all preserved like a time capsule. Archaeologists found no evidence of the supposed refugee injustice, suggesting the moral of the story was added later, a way to make sense of the senseless. That's the power of lost cities. They're not just physical places, but palimpsests, rewritten by every generation that encounters them. Now we turn from a city swallowed by the sea to one shrouded in whispers of magic, a place where the line between science and sorcery blurred into something extraordinary. Deep in the windswept steppes of Russia's Ural Mountains, where the horizon stretches uninterrupted for miles, lies a structure so precise it defies its 4,000-year age. Arkham isn't just another Bronze Age ruin, and it's a labyrinth of concentric rings, its streets laid out with mathematical precision, its walls aligned to track celestial events with startling accuracy. Often called the Russian Stonehenge, this fortified settlement predates its British counterpart by centuries, yet shares its aura of enigma. What sets Arkham apart isn't just its design, but the whispers that cling to it. Some claim it was a sanctuary for ancient wizards, others insist it's a landing site for otherworldly visitors, while archaeologists see a sophisticated ritual center where fire worship and star-gazing intertwined. The facts alone are extraordinary enough. Built around 1700 BC, Arkham's circular design included two massive ring walls, radial streets, and a central square, all oriented to mark solstices and equinoxes. Charred remains suggest ritual bonfires burned continuously, their smoke perhaps symbolizing a bridge between earth and sky. Yet what truly captivates isn't what's there, but what's missing. The site was deliberately abandoned just 200 years after its construction, its buildings carefully burned and left to the steppe winds. No signs of invasion, no traces of plague, just a silent exodus that's fueled speculation for decades. This vacuum of certainty has made Arkham a magnet for mythmakers. Slavic neopagans revere it as a spiritual homeland, hosting solstice ceremonies among its reconstructed walls. Soviet-era ufologists poring over aerial photos declared its geometry too perfect for human hands, attributing it to alien architects. Even today, New Age seekers trek to Arkham, convinced its energy vortices hold healing powers. The irony, these modern myths often overshadow the very real achievements of the Sintashta culture that built it, a people who pioneered chariot warfare and metallurgy centuries before Homer's Troy. Yet Arkham's greatest lesson lies in its duality. For scientists, it's a window into Bronze Age ingenuity, proving that primitive societies mastered astronomy and urban planning with tools we'd consider rudimentary. For believers, it's proof of lost wisdom, a place where magic and science blurred. Both perspectives reveal something true. Humans have always sought patterns in the cosmos, whether through ritual or equations. The real magic of Arkham isn't in its alleged wizardry, it's in how a cluster of crumbling walls can still ignite our imagination, bridging millennia with questions that resonate as strongly today as they must have under those ancient star-filled skies. Now we leave the open steppes for a far denser wilderness, a place where vines swallow monuments and the air hums with the cries of unseen creatures. Our next city doesn't just hide in the jungle, it's said to guard the secrets of a forgotten god. The jungles of Honduras have a way of swallowing secrets whole. Vines twist over stone, roots pry apart foundations, and centuries of rain erase all but the stubbornest traces of human hands. So when a team of explorers announced in 2012 that they'd found the legendary White City of the Monkey God, the world leaned in. This wasn't just another overgrown ruin. It was a place whispered about in indigenous tales and feverish colonial diaries, a city so ancient its builders were said to worship a simian deity. The name alone conjures images straight from a Victorian pulp novel, tangled greenery hiding gleaming temples, forgotten idols with hollow eyes, but the reality, as always, is both stranger and subtler. What the team actually uncovered in the Musquisha rainforest were the remains of a pre-Columbian settlement, earthen pyramids, stone sculptures of jaguars and vultures, and a cache of ceremonial vessels buried in the undergrowth. Carbon dating placed the site's peak between 1000 and 1400 CE, likely part of a network of settlements belonging to a culture archaeologists still know little about. The white in its name may refer to the pale limestone used in construction, or to the way mist clings to the ruins at dawn, making them seem to glow. As for the monkey god, that thread leads back to the Maya deity Hunahpu, often depicted with simian features, and to local legends of a lost civilization that revered primates as intermediaries between worlds. But here's where myth and history tangle like jungle roots. The White City's popular lore owes as much to outsiders as to local tradition. In the 1930s, aviator Charles Lindbergh claimed to have spotted a white rock city from the air, while journalist Theodore Maud returned from Honduras in 1940 with wild tales of golden altars and a curse tied to a monkey idol, a story he later admitted embellishing for publicity. These adventurers, consciously or not, were channeling a much older tradition, the European obsession with lost cities in the Americas, from Eldorado to Cibola. The jungle, in this imagination, wasn't just a landscape but a guardian, its density a metaphor for all the history colonialism failed to extract or explain. Yet the Mosquisha discovery also forces us to confront how much we still don't know. LiDAR scans in recent years have revealed vast, interconnected settlements beneath the canopy, proof that this region was far more densely populated than previously assumed. The real White City might not be one place but many, a civilization erased not by catastrophe but by the slow creep of time and vegetation. That's the haunting beauty of such sites. They remind us that entire worlds can vanish, leaving only fragments for later generations to misinterpret or mythologize. Now we turn from a city shrouded in greenery to one built on a scale so massive, its very stones spawned legends of giants, a place where the walls themselves seem to defy human hands. Mycenae doesn't just loom from the hills of Greece, it casts a shadow across the entirety of Western storytelling. Those towering lion gate stones, each weighing several tons, weren't just architectural feats, they were the birth certificate of an entire mythology. When later Greeks looked upon these megalithic walls, they couldn't fathom how human hands might have lifted them. The answer, to their minds, was obvious: giants with a single eye, creatures of impossible strength, the Cyclops. Homer himself wove these legends into the fabric of the Odyssey, where Odysseus blinds the monstrous Polyphemus, a descendant of the very beings said to have built Mycenae's fortifications. But the truth is even more fascinating. The Cyclopean masonry, as it's now called, wasn't the work of mythical beasts but of a sophisticated Bronze Age civilization that mastered engineering centuries before the Parthenon's first stone was laid. What's striking about Mycenae isn't just its physical grandeur, but how its collapse seeded the stories we still tell today. Around 1100 BC, this powerhouse of the ancient world, a hub of trade, art, and military might, crumbled in what historians call the Late Bronze Age collapse. Earthquakes, invasions, and climate shifts likely played a role, but the aftermath was pure cultural alchemy. As Mycenae's palaces fell to ruin, their memory distilled into legend. The real-life warlords of Mycenae became the heroes of Homer's epics Agamemnon, Menelaus, and the rest, their exploits exaggerated over generations into tales of divine favor and tragic flaws. Even the famous Mask of Agamemnon, unearthed by Heinrich Schliemann in 1876, though likely belonging to an earlier king, became a symbol of this blurred line between history and myth. The city's influence stretches far beyond ancient texts. Mycenae's labyrinthine layout, with its hidden cisterns and secret passages, inspired everything from later Greek theater's love of intrigue to modern fantasy's trope of the impenetrable fortress. Its gold-laden shaft graves, filled with intricate death masks and weaponry, proved that the so-called heroic age wasn't just poetic license, it was rooted in real opulence and artistry. Archaeologists have found Mycenaean pottery from Egypt to Sardinia, evidence of a trade network that rivaled modern globalization. Yet Mycenae's greatest legacy might be its lesson in cultural memory. The Greeks of the classical era, separated from Mycenae by a 400-year dark age, saw these ruins as remnants of a lost golden era. They didn't just tell stories about Mycenae, they pilgrimaged to it, much like visitors today gaze at the Lion Gate and feel the weight of millennia. That's the magic of this city. It reminds us that civilizations don't truly die. They transform sometimes into history, sometimes into myth, but always into something that lingers in the collective imagination. Now we turn from a city of stone giants to one swallowed by an even more relentless force, not the sea, but the sands of time and the desert's insatiable hunger. Ubar was more than a city. It was a cautionary tale carved into the very dunes that consumed it. Known in the Quran as Aram of the Pillars, this legendary hub of the frankincense trade was said to boast towers so tall they rivaled the heavens, its streets perfumed with the scent of burning resin, worth its weight in gold. Ancient texts warned it was a place of such arrogance that God erased it from the earth, leaving only whispers carried by desert winds. For centuries, scholars dismissed Ubar as pure myth, until satellite eyes peered beneath the sands of Oman's empty quarter, revealing faint geometric outlines that matched caravan routes from 2000 BC. What emerged from the dust wasn't just a city, but a revelation about how the desert both creates and destroys. The real Ubar, archaeologists now believe, was no floating paradise, but a critical way station for camel caravans hauling frankincense from Yemen to Mesopotamia. Its wealth came from controlling the Silk Road of Scent, where the gum of boswellia trees was traded for spices, silks, and gems. Yet this same prosperity became its undoing. Excavations show the city's collapse coincided with the overuse of its underground water, sources a slow-motion suicide as the wells ran dry and the dunes crept inward. The myth of divine punishment takes on new meaning when you consider the human folly beneath it. A civilization too busy counting riches to notice the earth turning to dust beneath their feet. What makes Ubar unforgettable isn't just its rediscovery in the 1990s, but how perfectly it embodies the duality of deserts in our imagination. To Bedouin storytellers, it was a moral fable about humility. To Victorian explorers like Bertram Thomas, who first hunted for it in the 1930s, it represented the romance of the unknown. Even NASA satellite technology, originally designed to map Mars, played a role in pinpointing its location, proving that the tools of future exploration can resurrect the past. The ruins themselves are sparse crumbling walls, a single well, fragments of incense burners, but their power lies in what they represent, the fragility of human ambition in the face of nature's indifference. Now we turn from a city swallowed by sand to one that vanished into water, but not before leaving behind a reflection so perfect it became a legend of its own. The ancient Chinese metropolis of Liangzhu didn't just collapse, it transformed, its demise giving birth to tales of an inverted city beneath the waves, where every stone and street was mirrored in eerie perfection. Liangzhu's engineers would have put modern city planners to shame. 5,000 years ago, while much of the world was still grappling with basic agriculture, this ancient Chinese metropolis boasted a hydraulic system so advanced it could rival today's infrastructure. Canals stretched like veins across the landscape, diverting floodwaters with precision, while reservoirs stored enough water to sustain a population of tens of thousands. The city's jade workshops produced intricate carvings, ceremonial blades, spiritual Kong tubes, each piece a testament to a society that blended technical mastery with artistic brilliance. Then, around 2300 BC, it all vanished. The bustling streets fell silent, the canals clogged with silt, and Liangzhu became little more than a whisper in the wind. What makes this disappearance so haunting isn't just the scale of the collapse, but the stories that grew from its ruins. Centuries later, folklore spoke of a mirror city beneath nearby Lake Tai, its inverted towers and bridges perfectly reflecting the world above. Local fishermen claimed that on certain moonlit nights, the water's surface would harden like glass, revealing glimpses of a lost civilization frozen in time. The tale at its core was a warning, a reminder that even the grandest achievements are fleeting, and vanity, like a reflection, dissolves with the slightest ripple. Archaeologists now suspect Liangzhu's downfall wasn't divine punishment, but something far more familiar: climate change. Sediment cores from the region show layers of flood deposits dating to the city's final days, evidence of relentless monsoon rains that overwhelmed those ingenious canals. Pollen samples tell a grimmer story: sudden shifts in vegetation, suggesting prolonged droughts that followed the deluges. This 1-2 punch of extreme weather would have decimated crops, fractured social order, and left Liangzhu vulnerable to conflicts or mass migrations. The parallels to modern crises are impossible to ignore. Like the Maya or the ancestral Pueblones, Liangzhu stands as proof that no amount of engineering genius can defy the whims of a changing planet. Yet the city's legacy lingers in unexpected ways. Its jade artifacts, unearthed in graves across China, reveal trade networks stretching thousands of miles. The precision of its urban layout with segregated residential, industrial, and ritual zones hints at a bureaucratic sophistication once thought impossible for Neolithic societies. Even the Mirror City myth carries a kernel of truth. When divers explored Lake Tai's depths, they found submerged Neolithic sites, their wooden pilings and pottery fragments eerily preserved in the silty darkness. Liangzhu's story isn't just about collapse, it's about resonance. The same waters that erased the city also preserved its memory, transforming it into a metaphor that transcends time. Today, as rising seas threaten coastal megacities and droughts parch farmlands, we're left to wonder, what reflections will future generations see when they look back at our own vanishing acts? Now, we turn from a city of mirrors to one that gleams with the allure of something even more seductive: gold. Not just any gold, but the last refuge of a fallen empire, hidden where the jungle refuses to surrender its secrets. Paititi isn't just another lost city. It's a ghost of resistance, a final flicker of defiance against an empire that thought it had won. When Spanish conquistadors marched into Cusco in 1533, they believed they'd crushed the Inca heart. But whispers persisted of a last refuge deep in the Amazon, where holdout nobility and priests fled with sacred relics, gold, and the mummified remains of their ancestors. This was Paititi, a place so shrouded in vines and legend that even its name is debated. Some say it means House of the Jaguar. Others claim it translates to Sister of Cusco, a mirror capital hidden where no European could follow. The myth took root in Spanish obsession. Chronicles like Juan Alvarez Maldonado's 1670 account describe a city brighter than the sun, its temples lined with gold sheets, its gardens bursting with tropical fruit. But these weren't neutral travel logs, they were fantasies spun to secure royal funding for expeditions. Conquistadors, already drunk on Potosi's silver and Eldorado's legends, saw Paititi as the ultimate prize. What they didn't grasp was how the story had been weaponized by the Inca themselves. Oral histories suggest rebel leaders like Tupac Amaru encouraged the myth, using it as a decoy to buy time for resistance movements. The longer the Spanish chased shadows in the jungle, the longer surviving Inca enclaves had to regroup. Modern archaeology paints a more nuanced picture. In 2001, Italian explorer Mario Poglia discovered a 17th-century Jesuit manuscript in the Vatican archives describing a city called Paititi, rich in gold, likely based on indigenous accounts. Then, in 2008, satellite imagery revealed geometric shapes in Peru's remote Madre de Dios region, sparking a flurry of expeditions. What they found weren't golden towers, but sprawling stone terraces and petroglyphs of serpents and celestial bodies, evidence of a real settlement, possibly a ceremonial outpost or frontier stronghold. The Kika, local Matsuyunka tribes, had known about the ruins for generations, calling them the place where the gods walked. Paititi's enduring power lies in its duality. To treasure hunters, it's the last great unfound hoard, a siren call that's claimed lives as recently as 2011, when a French explorer vanished searching for it. To indigenous activists, it's a symbol of unbroken heritage, the idea that some knowledge remains beyond colonial reach. Even pop culture can't resist its pull. The city inspired the jungle paradise in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But perhaps the real treasure isn't gold at all. It's the reminder that history isn't always written by the victors. Sometimes it's whispered by the survivors, carried on in stories too resilient to be erased. Now we shift from a city of hidden gold to one cloaked in a different kind of wealth, the kind measured in whispers and chills. Bangor's ruins don't sparkle, they loom, their broken walls etched with a warning so dire, even the Indian government enforces it. No one dares stay after sundown. Bangor Fort doesn't just stand abandoned, it breathes with a kind of eerie life, as if the stones themselves remember the curse that doomed it. According to local lore, the 17th-century city met its end when a sorcerer named Singhia fell obsessively in love with Princess Ratnavati. When she spurned his advances, he cast a spell dooming the entire kingdom to ruin. The princess threw herself from her palace balcony, and by the next dawn, Bangor was a ghost town. The curse, they say, lingers to this day. India's Archaeological Survey has taken the legend so seriously that it's posted signs forbidding visitors after sunset, a rare official nod to the supernatural. Yet what's fascinating isn't just the tale, but how it thrives alongside a very real history of collapse. Excavations reveal a more mundane tragedy. Bangor's elaborate water systems failed, likely due to deforestation or seismic shifts, turning a thriving hub into a parched wasteland. The grand stepwells, once brimming with life-giving water, now stand bone dry. But here's the twist. The ghost stories aren't just distractions from this truth, they're a way of grappling with it. Locals speak of shadowy figures drifting through the ruined temples, of disembodied laughter echoing near the marketplace. These aren't just campfire tales, they're a cultural memory of loss, personifying the chaos of a city betrayed by the very land that sustained it. Tourists flock to Bangor not despite its darkness but because of it. Guides recount how cameras malfunction near the princess's chambers, how sudden chills descend in the midday heat. The fort's ruins, with their intricate carvings of gods and dancers, become stage sets for the imagination, where every crumbling arch hints at unfinished drama. Even historians play along, noting how the curse legend mirrors older Sanskrit tropes about pride and divine retribution. In this way, Bangor isn't just a place, it's a dialogue between fact and folklore, where the past is never quite past. Now we descend from sun-scorched ruins into a world where survival meant burrowing deep, a city not cursed but cunning, its secrets hidden beneath the earth's skin. Derinkuyu doesn't just hide beneath the Turkish landscape. It sprawls, a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers descending 18 levels into the earth, capable of sheltering 20,000 people for months at a time. Discovered by accident in 1963, when a resident knocked down a wall in his basement and found a passage leading into the void, this ancient underground metropolis rewrote our understanding of survival engineering. Hewn from soft volcanic rock around the 8th century BC, Derinkuyu wasn't just a refuge. It was a fully functional city, complete with stables for livestock, wineries, chapels, and even a complex ventilation system that funneled fresh air through 52 shafts. The sheer scale of it boggles the mind. Massive circular stone doors, each weighing up to half a ton, could be rolled shut to seal off entire sections from invaders or disasters above. What makes Derinkuyu so mesmerizing isn't just its construction, but the urgency baked into its design. Historians believe it was built by the Phrygians or possibly the Hittites, then expanded by early Christians fleeing Roman persecution. Every corridor whispers of desperation and ingenuity. Niches for oil lamps precisely spaced to conserve fuel, wells tapping into underground rivers to ensure water supply, and communal kitchens designed to minimize smoke detection from the surface. This wasn't a place to live, it was a place to endure, a monument to human resilience in the face of existential threats. The walls still bear soot marks from centuries-old fires, and the grooves where hinges once swung tell silent stories of communities huddled in the dark, waiting for the all-clear. Yet Derinkuyu's legacy extends beyond its physical marvels. Its existence has fueled speculation about other subterranean worlds, from the hollow earth theories of the 19th century to modern conspiracy forums buzzing about secret networks beneath Antarctica or Tibet. The city's discovery coincided with Cold War paranoia, leading some to draw eerie parallels between ancient hideouts and 20th century bomb shelters. Even today, Derinkuyu challenges our assumptions about urbanization. What does it mean for a society to thrive not by reaching skyward, but by burrowing inward? The myths surrounding Derinkuyu are just as captivating as its stone passageways. Local folklore speaks of cave-dwelling jinn or lost tribes who never resurfaced, while some scholars suggest Plato's Atlantis allegory might have been inspired by Anatolian underground cities like this one. The truth, as always, is layered. Archaeologists have found connections to nearby Camelot, another subterranean complex, hinting at an entire network of hidden settlements. This wasn't an anomaly, it was a strategy, a way of life forged in response to relentless waves of conquerors: Persians, Macedonians, Romans. Derinkuyu's greatest lesson might be its timelessness. In an era of climate migration and digital bunkers, the idea of retreating underground no longer feels archaic but eerily prescient. The city's designers understood something we're only now relearning. Civilization isn't just about building higher. Sometimes survival means knowing how to disappear. Now we turn from a city carved into the earth to one consumed by fire, a place whose name alone has become synonymous with the end of days. The biblical cities of the plain weren't just destroyed, they were erased so thoroughly, their very location sparks debates to this day. But what if their story isn't just about divine wrath, but about a cataclysm so violent it seared itself into human memory? The cities of the plain aren't just a footnote to Sodom's infamous fate, they're a haunting ensemble. 5 civilizations wiped from the earth in a single cataclysmic stroke. Genesis paints them as a cautionary pentagram: Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela, each name carrying the weight of divine judgment. While Sodom and Gomorrah dominate the moral allegory, the lesser-known trio amplifies the story's scope. This wasn't just about punishing one corrupt city, but an entire region steeped in wickedness. Jewish texts like the Mishnah describe these places as paradises turned infernos, their lush valleys transformed into the Dead Sea's barren wastes, where the water itself became a monument to desolation. Geologists have long scrutinized this narrative for kernels of truth. The Dead Sea Rift Valley sits atop one of the most seismically active zones on Earth, and sediment cores reveal evidence of massive earthquakes around 1700 BC, precisely the era scholars associate with Abraham. At Tall El Hammam, the same site linked to Sodom, archaeologists uncovered a destruction layer with fused pottery and bone fragments, suggesting temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Some theorists propose a cosmic airburst like the Tunguska event could explain both the biblical fire and brimstone and the eerie salt-encrusted ruins nearby. The Dead Sea's hypersalinity, which prevents most life from thriving, adds a chilling postscript. Nature itself seems to enforce the curse millennia later. Yet the real power of these cities lies in their symbolic elasticity. Early Christian theologians framed their destruction as a warning against sexual immorality, while medieval maps marked the Dead Sea as God's smoking gun. Modern environmentalists reinterpret the tale as an allegory for ecological collapse, a civilization so out of balance with nature that it triggered its own demise. Even the names hold hidden meaning. Adma translates to red earth, hinting at fiery punishment, while Bela means swallowed, echoing the earth's literal opening in Numbers 16. The Quran's version, featuring the prophet Lot, emphasizes hospitality and xenophobia, proving how one story can refract across cultures into countless lessons. What's often overlooked is the survival of one city, Bela, later called Zor. According to Genesis, it was spared as a refuge for Lot's family, a loophole in divine wrath that raises unsettling questions. Was justice negotiable? Could compassion temper annihilation? The ambiguity lingers in Zor's disputed location. Some place it near modern-day Safi in Jordan, where mineral springs still attract pilgrims seeking healing. Its survival complicates the moral binary, suggesting that even in total judgment, exceptions whisper of mercy. Now we leave the ashen wastes of the Pentapolis for a revelation that rewrites history itself, a discovery proving the Amazon, long imagined as a pristine wilderness, once cradled civilizations as grand as any in the ancient world. The Amazon has long been painted as the ultimate untouched wilderness, a sea of green where humans were mere visitors, leaving no mark beyond scattered tribes and simple villages. That myth crumbles beneath the weight of modern discoveries. In the last 2 decades, satellite imagery and LiDAR technology have peeled back the jungle canopy to reveal something astonishing. Geometric earthworks stretching for hundreds of miles, sprawling ceremonial centers, and even grid-like patterns suggesting urban planning. These aren't just isolated ruins, they're the bones of a civilization that thrived here for centuries, shaping the land with a sophistication that rivals the pyramids. The so-called pristine jungle, it's a carefully curated garden, its biodiversity the result of intentional cultivation by people who understood the ecosystem far better than we ever gave them credit for. Take the region around the upper Tapajos River, where researchers uncovered clusters of fortified villages connected by sunken roads and arranged in precise circular formations. These weren't random settlements, they were part of a network, a social and political system that may have supported millions. The Amazonian dark earth found at these sites tells its own story, a nutrient-rich soil engineered by human hands, enriched with charcoal, pottery shards, and compost over generations. This wasn't just farming, it was terraforming. The indigenous peoples of the Amazon didn't just live in the jungle. They built it, molding it into a landscape that sustained complex societies long before European ships appeared on the horizon. Yet for centuries, colonial narratives dismissed these possibilities outright. Explorers like Percy Fawcett, who vanished in the 1920s searching for a fabled City of Z, were ridiculed for believing the Amazon could cradle anything more advanced than thatch huts. The bias was rooted in a dangerous assumption that indigenous peoples couldn't possibly have achieved what Europeans considered markers of civilization: monuments, agriculture, urban life. Modern archaeology exposes this arrogance for what it was. The truth is, the Amazon's lost cities weren't lost to the people who never forgot them. Oral histories of tribes like the Guaycurú describe ancestors who lived in great circular villages, their stories corroborated by the very earthworks now being mapped by scientists. The implications are profound. If the Amazon was once a patchwork of gardens, orchards, and even urban centers, then its current state isn't a primordial relic, it's a post-apocalyptic landscape, regrown after the collapse of these societies, likely due to diseases introduced by European contact. The myth of the empty jungle served a convenient purpose. It justified colonization, painting the land as ripe for the taking. Now, as we piece together this hidden history, we're forced to confront not just the brilliance of these lost civilizations, but the violence of their erasure. This revelation also reframes our understanding of environmental stewardship. The Amazon's indigenous peoples didn't merely adapt to their environment, they transformed it, creating a symbiotic relationship between human society and nature. Their methods, agroforestry, controlled burns, soil enrichment, offer lessons for a world grappling with climate change. The real lost city here isn't just a collection of ruins, it's a way of life, a blueprint for coexistence that modernity is only beginning to rediscover. Now we journey from the equatorial heat to the opposite extreme, a land of eternal ice and midnight sun, where a different kind of myth took root. Hyperborea, the Arctic utopia, wasn't just a place on a map, it was a dream of perfection, frozen in time and imagination. Hyperborea exists in the collective imagination like a frozen mirage, a land of perpetual sunlight where sickness and old age were unknown, where the air itself was said to hum with harmony. The ancient Greeks placed this utopia beyond the realm of Boreas, the god of the north wind, describing a people so blessed by Apollo that they danced in golden fields under never-setting suns. Herodotus wrote of Hyperborean envoys delivering sacred offerings wrapped in wheat straw to Delos, while Pindar's odes painted them as untouched by struggle, their lives a seamless blend of music and leisure. But what's fascinating isn't just the idyllic vision, it's how this myth mutated across centuries, warping from poetic allegory into dangerous dogma. By the 19th century, theorists like Helena Blavatsky had grafted Hyperborea onto their esoteric maps, claiming it as the cradle of a lost Aryan super race. The Nazis, ever eager to mine mythology for propaganda, sent expeditions to Scandinavia and Tibet searching for remnants of these supposed Arctic ancestors, their twisted ideology freezing a beautiful legend into something monstrous. The original Hyperborean tales likely sprang from real encounters. Greek traders hearing Sami or Siberian shamans describe the midnight sun, their accounts filtered through Mediterranean cosmology. The eternal sunshine detail mirrors Arctic summers, while the emphasis on abundance reflects indigenous subsistence strategies in harsh climates. Early cartographers, lacking precise knowledge of polar regions, often drew Hyperborea as an actual landmass, sometimes connecting it to Thule, another semi-mythical northern territory. These speculative maps weren't just geographical errors, they were dreams given form, proof of humanity's need to imagine perfect societies just beyond the horizon. Yet Hyperborea's darkest chapter came when racist pseudoscience hijacked its imagery. The Thule Society, a precursor to the Nazi Party, adopted Hyperborea as part of their delusional ancestry myths, blending it with distorted Norse lore. Heinrich Himmler's Onanub division funded archaeological digs across Norway, hoping to find proof of an ancient Arctic Atlantis that would justify their supremacist ideologies. The irony is staggering. A myth born from cross-cultural storytelling became a tool for exclusion and hatred. Today, Hyperborea endures in paradoxical ways. Climate scientists cite it as an example of how ancient peoples interpreted real environmental phenomena, while New Age movements romanticize it as a lost spiritual homeland. Modern fantasy literature, from Marvel comics to role-playing games, reimagines it as a realm of mystic technology or forgotten gods. The legend's resilience reveals an uncomfortable truth. Utopias are mirrors reflecting whatever ideals or prejudices we project onto them. As we turn from this Arctic dreamscape to our final cities, we're left to wonder, what happens when today's metropolises become tomorrow's myths? Will they inspire hope or warning? The answer, like Hyperborea itself, may depend on who's telling the tale. Dubai's skyscrapers pierce the clouds like glass needles, their reflections shimmering in the desert heat. But what if these monuments to modernity are the future's Atlantis? Venice sinks millimeter by millimeter into its own lagoon, its palazzos already whispering to tourists in the language of nostalgia. These aren't just cities, they're time capsules in the making, their fates hinting at a startling truth. The cycle of rise and ruin never truly ends. Climate scientists warn that rising seas could swallow Miami by the end of the century, leaving only the skeletal remains of Art Deco hotels poking above the waves. Archaeologists of the year 3000 might sift through Dubai's submerged highways, puzzling over the purpose of artificial islands shaped like palm trees, just as we now debate the ritual significance of Stonehenge. War adds another layer of fragility. Imagine a future where Kiev's golden domed cathedrals exist only in holographic reconstructions, or where Shanghai's skyline is reduced to rubble lore in post-apocalyptic folktales. What makes this idea so haunting is how it inverts our sense of permanence. The ancient Sumerians never imagined would become a footnote. The Romans assumed their empire would outlast the stars. Yet here we are, filming TikToks atop their ruins. Modern cities face threats our ancestors couldn't fathom. Cyber attacks erasing digital infrastructure, microplastics fossilizing into geological strata, even the risk of nuclear annihilation leaving concrete jungles as glassy craters. In New Orleans, locals already swap stories about the old city buried beneath flood layers, a preview of how oral traditions might one day frame Manhattan or Mumbai. Artists like Robert Polidori photograph abandoned Chernobyl apartments, their peeling wallpaper and scattered toys eerily presaging how quickly ordinary life can curdle into artifact. Yet there's a twisted poetry in this. The same forces that birthed myth's natural disasters, human hubris, the slow creep of time, are still at work, just with different actors. Future civilizations might spin legends about the glass plains of Dubai, where towers said to touch the heavens were toppled by sandstorms. Venice could become the next wise, its drowned bell towers inspiring tales of lovers separated by rising tides. Even mundane details, a subway token, a half-melted smartphone might morph into mystical relics, their original purposes lost to interpretation. The irony. We're living in the golden age of documentation, yet our terabytes of data could vanish faster than cuneiform tablets. Digital storage degrades, cloud servers require maintenance no one may bother to provide. This cyclical dance of creation and loss raises uncomfortable questions. Are we building for eternity or just for the next fiscal quarter? The Burj Khalifa's engineers planned for earthquakes, but did they account for a world where the water table rises faster than predicted? The real lesson of lost cities isn't about fragility, it's about legacy. The Minoans left us frescoes of dolphins. What will we leave? A layer of radioactive isotopes. Plastic fossils in the Mariana Trench, or perhaps, if we're lucky, stories of resilience like the Dutch floating cities prototype, or the solar panels still humming in some post-collapse Nevada outpost. Now we descend deeper than Dubai's foundations or Venice's canals, to a city that supposedly exists where no light reaches, in the hollow heart of the earth itself. Agartha isn't just a myth, it's the ultimate testament to humanity's refusal to accept that anywhere, even the planet's core, could be empty of wonder. Beneath our feet, where science tells us there's only molten rock and crushing pressure, legends whisper of another world entirely Agartha, the kingdom at the Earth's core. This isn't just some shadowy cavern, it's a sprawling civilization bathed in an eternal twilight glow, its streets lined with crystalline towers and libraries holding secrets older than humanity itself. The idea of a hollow Earth might sound like pure fantasy, but its roots run deep. Tibetan Buddhist texts speak of Shambhala's subterranean counterpart, a realm where enlightened beings guard ancient wisdom. Western mystics like Madame Blavatsky wove these threads into their theosophical tapestries, claiming Agartha was the last refuge of a lost root race, its inhabitants wielding psychic powers beyond our comprehension. Even Nazi occultists became obsessed, sending expeditions to Tibet and Antarctica, convinced the poles were gateways to this underworld utopia. What makes Agartha so mesmerizing isn't just its whimsical geography, it's the stubborn human desire to believe there's always more, just out of sight. Medieval maps marked the poles as portals to paradise. Renaissance alchemists wrote of a central sun nourishing inner ecosystems. In the 19th century, eccentric scientist John Cleves Sims Jr. campaigned for an expedition to the North Pole's whole, armed with theories about concentric spheres and habitable layers. His ideas inspired everything from Jules Verne's journey to the center of the Earth to modern conspiracy forums buzzing about secret Nazi bases in Antarctica. The myth even infiltrated pop culture. Marvel's Attilan, the hidden city of the Inhumans, draws direct inspiration from Agartha's lore. But here's the twist: Agartha's appeal lies in its impossibility. Unlike Atlantis or Eldorado, which could exist in some forgotten corner of the globe, a hollow Earth defies fundamental physics. Yet that very defiance is why the legend persists. It's a metaphor for the unexplored, not just of our planet, but of human potential. UFOlogists claim Agartha's inhabitants pilot flying saucers. New Agers believe it's a spiritual vortex where ascended masters guide evolution. Even the name shifts meaning like subterranean currents, sometimes Agartha, sometimes Agharti or Asgard, each variation reflecting the teller's biases. The darkest chapter of this myth emerged when the Nazis twisted it into propaganda. Himmler's Onanub, a pseudo-scientific branch of the SS, funded Tibetan expeditions in the 1930s, seeking proof of Aryan ancestry tied to Agartha's superior beings. This grotesque distortion reveals the danger of such legends when divorced from their spiritual roots. they become tools for hatred. Yet Agartha's core truth endures. It's a mirror for our yearning. In an age where satellites map every inch of the surface, the idea that something vast and mysterious could still lie beneath us is irresistible. Perhaps that's the real magic of Agartha. It's not a place to be found, but a reminder that wonder doesn't require proof. Whether imagined as a literal city or a collective metaphor for the unknown, it challenges us to keep searching, not just for hidden worlds, but for the uncharted territories within ourselves. After all, if we ever did reach the Earth's core and find only molten iron, would we admit defeat? Or would we whisper, like all great explorers, we must have taken a wrong turn? From Atlantis to Agartha, these 27 cities aren't just relics of the past, they're living, breathing fragments of human imagination, each one a mirror reflecting our deepest yearnings and darkest warnings. Think about it, when we whisper the name Atlantis, we're not just picturing a sunken island, we're grappling with our fear of hubris, the uneasy sense that even the mightiest civilizations can crumble overnight. When we chase the golden mirage of Eldorado, we're not just hunting treasure, we're confronting the destructive power of greed, the way desire can warp reality until we're lost in our own obsessions. And when we dream of Shambhala, we're not just imagining a hidden paradise, we're yearning for a sanctuary, a promise that somewhere, even in the bleakest times, there's still a place untouched by chaos. These stories endure because they're more than entertainment. They're survival tools passed down through generations like a collective survival guide. The flood myths woven into Wise and Sodom aren't just dramatic tales, they're ancient warnings about environmental recklessness, coded reminders to build on higher ground or risk annihilation. The vanishing cities like Roanoke and Helike teach us how quickly the familiar can dissolve into mystery, how fragile our grip on history really is. Even the wildest legends, like Agartha's hollow earth, reveal something profound. Humans will always invent stories to fill the gaps in our understanding, to make the unknown feel just a little less terrifying. But here's the twist: myths don't just shape the past, they sculpt the future. Every explorer who ever sailed into uncharted waters, every archaeologist brushing dust off a buried wall, is chasing a version of these stories. The White City of the Monkey God wasn't just a rumor, it was a hypothesis, one that led to the discovery of real civilizations we'd written off as fantasy. The Amazonian metropolis myths, long dismissed as colonial exaggeration, are now forcing us to rewrite history, proving indigenous peoples engineered landscapes we once called untamed. These legends aren't lies, they're invitations to dig deeper, to question assumptions, to remember that every impossible city might just be waiting for the right technology, the right perspective to step out of the shadows. And that's the humbling truth these 27 cities leave us with. The skyscrapers of Dubai, the neon sprawl of Tokyo, the ancient alleyways of Rome, they're all future myths in the making. Centuries from now, will storytellers speak of New York as a drowned Atlantis, its subway tunnels home to sea monsters? Will climate refugees whisper about Venice the Eternal, a floating dream swallowed by the Adriatic? The lesson isn't that our cities will fall, but that they'll transform, their truths warping into legends we can't yet imagine. So the next time you walk down a bustling street, pause for a second. Listen to the hum of traffic, the chatter of strangers, the rhythm of a place alive with stories. Because someday, this too will be someone else's myth, a tale of a lost world, pieced together from fragments of steel and glass, waiting for the next generation to wonder, what were they really like? The cycle never ends, and that's the magic of it. Now it's your turn. Which of these lost cities resonates with you? Do you think our modern metropolises will inspire myths of their own? Drop your thoughts below, let's keep the conversation alive. And if you've enjoyed this journey through time and legend, don't forget to subscribe. Who knows what forgotten worlds we'll uncover?